Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
We are so glad you are tuning in with us today.
Yeah, and hey, just a quick reminder up top. If you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it verdict before you book, follow the show on Spotify or Apple.
Right, because we really dig into the realities of these places, no influencer filters here.
Exactly. So usually, when you set out to book a tropical vacation, you're basically interacting with an algorithm.
Yeah, like a machine.
Right. Think of it like a giant global vending machine. You put in your hard-earned money, you push a button, and the machine dispenses this perfectly packaged, completely predictable, friction-free week of relaxation.
You're paying for the illusion of effortlessness. I mean, the modern tourism industry is built entirely around erasing the physical and mental toll of moving across the planet.
Yeah, the direct flight lands, then the resort sends an air-conditioned car, someone immediately hands you a cold towel and a welcome drink.
Oh, I love the cold towel.
It's the best.
Right.
And your biggest cognitive load for the entire week is like choosing between the pool or the beach.
Yeah, it's clean, it's curated, and it's heavily insulated from the actual country you're visiting.
But if you travel to the absolute northernmost tip of Sumatra in Indonesia, to a place called Weh Island or Pulau Weh, that vending machine is completely shattered.
Oh, it is broken into a million pieces.
Yeah, you hand over your money, and in return, you get zero Wi-Fi, incredibly steep volcanic cliffs, and, a host province operating under highly conservative local laws.
But here's the crazy part. Somehow, despite all of those massive barriers, this specific island is rapidly becoming the most sought-after budget dive spot in the world for 2026 and 2027.
Which is just wild to me.
Right. But the underlying dynamic here is fascinating because we usually view travel friction, like a delayed ferry or a lack of Western amenities, as a bug.
A failure of the destination.
Exactly. But for Weh Island, that friction is actually the core feature.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We have our hands on a hyper-detailed travel audit of Weh Island, and it strips away all that romanticized, saturated travel influencer aesthetic to look at the mechanical reality of this place.
Yeah, we are looking at the cold, hard facts.
So if you are listening to this right now while budgeting out a trip to Southeast Asia, maybe you're looking at the new tourist taxes and wall-to-wall crowds in Bali, and you're thinking, isn't there somewhere left that hasn't been monetized to death?
Well, this deep dive is absolutely for you.
Right. We're going to look at the exact economics, the logistics, the cultural guardrails of Weh Island to answer one simple question. Is the massive effort required to get here actually worth it?
To understand why people are willing to endure that effort, you really have to look at the protective barrier that the friction creates.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, let's look at the broader regional context, right? We have islands all across Southeast Asia that are just buckling under the weight of over-tourism.
Yeah, the Gailis, parts of Thailand.
Exactly. The infrastructure is collapsing, the reefs are dying, and the prices are skyrocketing to match the insane demand. But Weh Island sits isolated at the top of the Malacca Strait. It demands a multi-stage, often exhausting journey just to arrive.
It is not a direct flight situation.
Not at all. And it operates under Islamic Sharia law, which immediately, filters out a massive demographic of casual vacationers.
You were talking about the party crowd.
Oh, 100%. The people who equate a beach vacation with sundowner cocktails and beachfront DJ sets.
Right, the bucket drink crowd.
Yeah. Because the island naturally filters them out, the destination curates its own highly specific demographic. It attracts travelers who are willing to put in genuine physical and logistical work for the reward of an untouched reef, absolute quiet, and, well, pricing that feels like a time capsule.
Let's get into those numbers right now, because when I first reviewed the financial breakdown of the audit, I legitimately thought there was a decimal error.
I know, it's jarring to see these prices in 2026.
It really is. Okay, according to the data, a beachfront or hillside bungalow in the main hub of Iboy runs between $6 and $15 a night.
$6 a night. Just let that sink in.
Insane. A fast ferry ticket across the strait is roughly $5. If you want to do a single fun dive with a reputable operator, you're paying about $32.
Which is practically unheard of for good diving now.
Right. Renting a suitor for 24 hours costs $6, and a local plate of nasi goreng is sitting at $1.50.
Wow.
Yeah. The force calculates a highly comfortable mid-range daily budget at between $45 and $60 a day.
For a mid-range trip, that's incredible.
Even the flights, flying from major hubs like Medan or Jakarta into Banda Aceh's Sultan Iskandar Muda Airport, The airport code is BTJ. They average around $60 to $150 round trip.
Those numbers represent an economic reality that has essentially vanished from mainstream Indonesian tourism. I mean, if you look at comparable dive quality in Raja Ampat or Komodo, you are looking at multipliers of 3, 4, or even 5 on those baseline costs.
But I have to challenge this, though. You cannot rent a room anywhere in the world for $6 without there being a massive catch.
Fair point.
People are trained to look for the hidden tax,
Yeah.
right? Like, is there a mandatory environmental levy when you step off the boat? Are the dive shops artificially inflating equipment rentals to make up for it?
You're looking at this through the lens of a Western resort economy. You kind of have to strip away the idea of a financial tax entirely.
Okay, so what's the catch?
The catch is paid in infrastructure. When you hand over $6 for that bungalow, you are buying an aggressively basic physical reality.
Like, how basic are we talking?
We are talking a wooden room with a fan.
Hmm.
You will likely share a bathroom that only has cold water. The walls are paper thin, so you will hear geckos and the jungle all night. And your connection to the outside world via Wi-Fi is going to drop constantly.
Okay. So the local families operating these guest houses aren't suppressing prices to compete. The price just accurately reflects the simplicity of the build and the local cost of living.
That is the crucial distinction, yeah. There is no massive foreign corporate hotel chain artificially driving up the baseline real estate value here. The tourism economy is hyper-local.
Got it.
But to your earlier point about the demographic filter, the audit highlights what it calls the ultimate skip-if signal for any potential visitor.
The Sharia law.
Yes. ASA, the province that governs Weh Island, is an autonomous region that strictly implements Sharia law.
We should clarify, this isn't just a cultural suggestion. This is the actual legislative framework of the province.
It dictates the entire social and commercial landscape. And for a tourist, the most immediate manifestation of this is the total absence of alcohol.
Like zero alcohol.
Effectively zero. There are no beach bars. You cannot just go buy a 6-pack of beer at a local convenience store. The concept of nightlife simply does not exist on this island.
What's fascinating here is how this is just a brilliant mechanism for crowd control. If a traveler's fundamental requirement for a vacation includes a cold beer on the beach at sunset, no amount of $32 world-class dives will salvage the trip for them.
They will be miserable. And worse, they will be pushing against the boundaries of their host culture, which is just disrespectful.
Which creates friction not just for the traveler, but for the local community too.
It is a complete mismatch of expectations. So if you require a boozy, vibrant social scene, the audit is unequivocal. You must skip Weh Island.
Okay, but let's say I'm totally fine with a dry island. I want to read a book, dive 3 times a day, and go to sleep at 9 p.m. I still can't just throw a dart at a calendar and book a flight, can I?
No, absolutely not.
Because the source goes into immense detail about the environmental rhythms of this region. You aren't just checking a weather app for rain. The entire island functions at the mercy of the Andaman Sea.
Yeah, the meteorology of the region dictates your experience far more than the temperature does. The audit identifies the absolute optimal windows for visiting as February to April, and a secondary window from September to early November.
So what is happening in the water during those specific months?
You are getting the calmest sea states, which translates directly to underwater visibility.
Right, the most important thing for diving.
Exactly. For a dive-centric destination, water clarity is the primary currency. During those golden windows, the currents are manageable, the surface is like glass, and you can see the reef architecture and the pelagic life perfectly.
And what if someone books a cheap flight in December? Because usually December is a huge travel month.
Oh, they are flying directly into the northeast monsoon. From November through January, the meteorological dynamic shifts violently.
It's like someone dropped a massive washing machine agitator into the strait, right? The wind churns the surface, which pulls sand and sediment up from the shallow coastal shelves.
Yeah, that 30-meter crystal clear visibility turns into a bowl of murky milk.
So the diving is ruined.
Beyond just the ruined visibility, the monsoon brings genuine logistical hazards. The primary dive sites, which are often situated around rocky outcrops and deep channels, they become entirely inaccessible due to the massive swell.
Wow, so you can't even get to them.
Right, but the most critical failure point is the ferry crossing from the Sumatran mainland. When the sea state deteriorates, The ferry ride transforms from a scenic 45-minute cruise into a genuinely harrowing ordeal.
Like people getting violently seasick.
Seasick, terrified, and in severe cases, the Port Authority simply cancels the sailings altogether.
Which means you are physically stranded in Banda Aceh, just watching your vacation days evaporate, or you are stuck on the island missing your return flight home.
Yeah, the unpredictability of the monsoon season introduces a level of stress that completely undermines the entire purpose of the trip.
Okay, so let's assume I nail the golden window. I'm looking at March. With prices this low, my immediate fear is that the island will be completely overrun with backpackers.
That's a logical assumption.
Right. But the audit maps out a crowd dynamic that is totally different from the backpacker trails in Thailand or the rest of Indonesia.
It really is. The baseline volume of international arrivals is shockingly low. You don't have massive cruise ships pulling into the harbor and dumping 3,000 day trippers onto the beach.
Thank goodness.
The capacity of the island simply couldn't support it anyway. Instead, the major fluctuations in crowd density are driven almost entirely by domestic tourism.
The source specifically points out Indonesian public holidays, the Eid celebration at the end of Ramadan, and just standard weekends.
Right, because Banda Aceh is a massive city just a short ferry ride away, Weh Island serves as the primary weekend escape for local families and university students.
And that domestic focus completely changes the geography of where people stay, too. Let's break down the distinct zones of the island, because where you book your room heavily dictates your entire daily reality.
The island is essentially segmented by traveler type. If you are an international backpacker or a solo diver, you are almost certainly heading to Iboy.
Yeah, Iboy is on the western edge, facing the smaller Rubia Island. The audit describes it as incredibly dense but highly localized, like there are no massive roads. It's a network of narrow footpaths carved right into the cliffside above the water.
It is the epicenter of the budget dive scene. It's highly social, it's easily walkable, and it gives you immediate access to the snorkeling channel.
And then just south of that is Gapang Beach. How does Gapang differ?
While the topography is much flatter, which immediately changes the whole feel of the place, it is quieter, slightly more spread out, and it anchors some of the more established mid-range dive operations like Lumba.
So it's less of the backpacker crowd.
Yeah, it draws a slightly older, highly dedicated dive demographic.
But what if I have zero interest in strapping on a scuba tank?
Yeah.
What if I am traveling with the kids and I just want a safe beach?
Then you completely avoid the western edge, and you head east to Sumatra.
Sumatra?
Right. The water there is protected, making it much safer for casual swimming. The beaches are wider, you get spectacular sunrise views, and the bungalow plots are larger, so they accommodate families much more easily.
And finally, there is Sabang town itself.
Sabang is the administrative heart of the island. It's where the hospital is, the larger markets, the government buildings. But, it is not a leisure destination.
You're not going there to relax.
No. You might go there to buy a specific pharmacy item or use an ATM, but you do not book your beach vacation in Sabang.
Got it. There is a vital piece of strategy the source mentions regarding booking these bases, especially those $10 rooms in Aboy. It introduces this concept of inventory scarcity that I think travelers often misunderstand.
Yeah, the massive mistake travelers make is assuming that because a destination is cheap, it is infinitely available.
Right.
The price of a $10 fan room in Iboy does not surge to $100 during the March peak season. The price stays $10, but the physical supply of those rooms is incredibly small.
It's exactly like trying to buy face value tickets to a massive stadium concert. The price doesn't change, but if you hesitate, the inventory completely vanishes.
Exactly.
A cheap room, booked late, effectively becomes sold out at any price. You are forced into the $40 rooms, not because the cheap ones raise their rates, but because they are simply gone.
Which means if you are targeting the golden window for diving, you absolutely cannot wing your accommodation. You must secure your flights and lock in your first few nights at a specific guest house months in advance.
Okay, so we have the season picked and the room secured. Now we have to actually get there.
This is the hard part.
Yeah, the audit paints a picture of this arrival day that is, frankly, a logistical gauntlet. Let's map out the exact sequence of events, because this is where the theoretical friction becomes a very sweaty, physical reality.
The journey demands a significant amount of cognitive energy. Stage 1 begins the absolute moment you land at Sultan Iskandar Muda Airport in Sumatra. You have just navigated baggage claim, and immediately you need to cross the city of Banda Aceh to reach Ulee Lheue port.
And let's be clear, there is no seamless, integrated train network waiting for you.
No. You are stepping out into the tropical heat to negotiate a transfer. The audit notes that a standard taxi will quote around 100,000 Indonesian rupiah, which is roughly 6 to 7 US dollars.
Okay, so not expensive, but you have to do the work.
Right. You can haggle this, or opt for a motorized tuk-tuk, or hunt down the occasionally running free airport shuttle if you're lucky.
And once you survive the negotiation and make it to the port, you are faced with the ferry schedules. And this isn't a subway system that runs every 10 minutes.
No, the connectivity is highly restricted. You basically have two options. The Express Bahari Fast Ferry, which is a passenger-only vessel that takes about 45 minutes and costs $5.
Okay, that sounds manageable.
Or the slow ro-ro car ferry, which takes over 2 hours but costs only $2.
The critical pressure point here is the timetable, right?
Yeah.
The fast ferries typically run 3 times a day, often an 8 a.m., a 10 a.m., and an afternoon departure around 4 p.m. If your flight into Sumatra is delayed by even 90 minutes, your entire itinerary shatters. You miss the afternoon boat, and you are spending the night in a transit hotel in Banda Aceh.
Which is exactly why tight connections are the enemy of this trip. You have to build slack into your travel day. But, okay, let's assume the logistics hold. You catch the fast ferry, you cross the strait, and the boat pulls into Balohan port on Weh Island. You might assume the journey is over.
You step off the boat, expecting to see your $10 bungalow right there.
Nope.
Instead, you're looking at a concrete pier surrounded by dense jungle, and you realize you are still 45 minutes away from Iboe. And here is the kicker. There is absolutely zero public transportation on the island. No buses, no set routes.
So you are immediately back into a negotiation scenario. A private taxi across the island to the dive beaches will cost between $9 and $11. If you have the patience, you might find a shared minibus willing to take you for $3, provided they can find enough other passengers to fill the seats.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to focus on the psychology of this specific moment. You started your day in a massive transit hub, flew into the chaotic sensory overload of Sumatra, haggled for a taxi, worried about missing the boat, endured the crossing, and then haggled again at Balohan port. You are physically and mentally drained.
You are exhausted, and that exhaustion is exactly why the source provides a very stern warning. Under no circumstances should you plan a dive for the afternoon you arrive.
It seems so tempting, right? You finally make it, the water looks incredible, you just want to immediately jump in.
It is incredibly dangerous. Scuba diving requires mental sharpness and physical equilibrium. After that logistical gauntlet, you are dehydrated, you are tired, and your cognitive load is totally maxed out. Attempting to manage buoyancy and monitor your air consumption in an unfamiliar current on zero rest is exactly how accidents happen.
So the mandatory play is to drop your bags, get a plate of food, stare at the ocean, and just decompress.
The friction forces you to slow down.
But let's talk about where you are actually dropping those bags. The audit segments the accommodation into 4 very distinct realities, and it's crucial to understand what you are actually buying. Let's start with the baseline, the backpacker reality.
Right, this is the $6 to $15 tier, primarily located on those cliffside footpaths in Iboe.
What does the physical architecture of a $6 room actually look like?
It is functional shelter. You are looking at a wooden or woven bamboo structure. It will have a bed, a mosquito net, and a ceiling fan, or maybe a wall-mounted oscillating fan.
And the plumbing, because that's usually where budget places suffer.
Oh, at this price point, you are often looking at a shared bathroom block. Even if you secure an ensuite, you must assume it is cold water only. There are no massive water heaters strapped to these hillside shacks.
Right.
The shower is essentially a pipe hooked up to the local gravity-fed water supply, or a traditional mandi where you scoop water out of a basin.
So you are dealing with cold showers. You are hearing every single conversation from the bungalow next door through the thin walls, and you are navigating steep, unlit concrete stairs in the dark to get back to your room after dinner.
Exactly. The trade-off for the extreme affordability is the total absence of modern insulation. But the upside is the unparalleled proximity to the reef and the highly integrated social atmosphere of all the other divers.
Okay, let's step up to the mid-range couple. Let's say I have $20 to $40 a night to spend. I wanted a bit more infrastructure.
This budget pulls you into Kapang, or the newer, slightly more robust concrete builds in Iboe. The absolute defining feature of crossing this $20 threshold is the introduction of air conditioning and a guaranteed private bathroom.
But the source is meticulous with its wording here. Mid-range does not equate to a Western standard of luxury, does it?
Not at all. You're paying for a sealed room and temperature control. The AC unit might be old and it might rattle loudly. The linens will be clean but very basic. And remember, the power grid on the island is prone to fluctuations, so your AC might just cut out at 2 a.m. anyway.
So you are buying a baseline of comfort, not an aesthetic, Instagram experience.
Precisely.
What about the family reality? If I'm bringing 2 kids, I have a budget of, say, $25 to $60 a night.
As we discussed, this points you towards Sumatra. The builds here are slightly larger to accommodate extra beds. The value proposition is the safety of the calm water and the physical space for children to play without the hazards of those steep cliffs in Iboi.
But you are geographically isolated from the main tourist hubs, which means you are utterly reliant on the guest house to cook your meals, or you are paying a premium for taxi transfers every single time you want to leave the property.
Right. Which brings us to the final category, and this is where the island's economic reality is most stark. The luxury seeker.
Okay, wait, what if I have unlimited budget? Let's say I am indifferent to the budget. I have thousands of dollars to burn, and I want a 5-star manicured experience. Can I just buy a private plunge pool, 24-hour room service, and high-speed fiber internet?
No, you cannot buy it because it simply has not been built. The ceiling for accommodation on Weh Island tops out at roughly $60 to $110 a night.
Why is that, though? Why hasn't a massive luxury developer moved in to capitalize on this incredible diving?
It all comes down to logistics and local regulation. To build and maintain a true 5-star resort requires a massive, unbroken supply chain. It requires a flawless power grid to run industrial kitchens and massive climate control systems. It requires advanced water desalination or huge freshwater reserves. Weh Island simply does not possess that municipal infrastructure.
That makes sense.
Furthermore, the local land ownership laws and the conservative Sharia governance create an environment that is highly unattractive to massive foreign hospitality conglomerates.
Because they can't build a massive beach club to generate high-margin alcohol sales, so the whole financial model for a mega resort just collapses before they even pour the concrete.
Exactly. The infrastructure ceiling is hard-capped by the environment and the law. The absolute best you can do is a very comfortable, well-managed boutique dive resort.
There's a massive silver lining to this, though. Because the corporate mega resorts don't exist, the insidious pricing structures that follow them don't exist either.
Like the hidden fees.
Yeah, there are no 15% mandatory resort fees tacked onto your bill at checkout. There are no surprise municipal tourist bed taxes. The price they quote you for the bungalow is exactly what you pay. It is incredibly honest and transparent.
And that transparency extends perfectly to the food, which is the next major pillar of the audit. You have to eat, and the culinary landscape here is deeply intertwined with the cultural etiquette.
The food prices are a backpacker's absolute dream. A substantial plate of nasi goreng, or mie goreng, which is fried rice or noodles, is going to cost between $1.20 and $1.80. Adding chicken or beef pushes it to maybe $2.
Even if you hunt down a cafe catering to tourists with pancakes or a basic burger, you are rarely spending more than $5. But the real value is in the local specialties.
The audit specifically highlights the seafood. You are sitting on an island surrounded by incredibly rich fishing grounds. You can walk down to a local warung, pick out a fresh fish that was caught that very morning, and have it grilled right in front of you for $47.
And then there is the coffee. Aceh is famous all across Indonesia for its coffee culture. It is thick, incredibly strong, and usually served with condensed milk. It is a staple of daily life, and it costs literally pennies.
But consuming this food brings us to the absolute non-negotiables of the deep dive, the etiquette. Because you are not just a customer here, you are a guest in a deeply religious province.
The first rule of etiquette goes right back to alcohol. The law is absolute. No public consumption, no public intoxication.
The source does note a slight nuance, that a handful of very quiet, tourist-facing accommodations might quietly offer a beer for $2.50 or $3. But the underlying advice is to never expect it, never demand it, and never consume it openly.
Right. And the second rule governs dress code, which is a direct reflection of Islamic modesty laws.
The distinction here is between the water and the village, right? If you are actively snorkeling, diving, or sitting immediately on the sand at a tourist beach like Iboi, traditional swimwear like bikinis or board shorts are tolerated.
But the absolute second you step off the sand onto the footpath, or if you rent a scooter to drive into Sabang town to use the ATM, the rules change completely. Shoulders must be covered, knees must be covered, and this is particularly enforced for women.
It is a fundamental sign of respect. Ignoring it doesn't just make you look like an ignorant tourist, it creates genuine friction with the local community that hosts you. Which leads directly into the third point of etiquette, which actually doubles as a massive logistical trap if you don't understand the mechanics of the society.
We are talking about Friday prayers.
Yes. Let's explain how this actually works. Because in a Western context, a religious service might mean a specific building is busy for an hour on a Sunday morning. In ACE, Friday prayers dictate the entire flow of commerce.
It is a full societal pause. From late morning until roughly 2 p.m. every single Friday, the island effectively stops.
The dive boats do not go out. The scooter rental shops lock their doors. The warongs and restaurants turn off their grills. Even the ferry schedules are often entirely paused.
Think of Friday mornings here, like a Sunday morning in a very traditional small town, but amplified. If you wake up late on a Friday and wander out at 11:30 a.m. looking to hire a taxi and grab a massive lunch, you will find a ghost town.
You will literally be sitting on the curb, incredibly hungry, until the afternoon. The audit solution is simple. Hoard your resources. Buy extra water, fruit, and snacks on Thursday night. View Friday morning as mandatory downtime. Read a book. Sleep in. Do not try to force a transaction when the society is at prayer.
It also notes that the evenings shut down early. By 8 p.m., kitchens are already cleaning up. If you try to find dinner at 9:30 p.m., you will likely go hungry. The rhythm of the island is early to rise, early to sleep.
Okay, let's take all of this, the cheap food, the basic rooms, the scooter rentals, and let's run the final math. The audit provides a highly detailed budgetary breakdown, and it highlights exactly where people accidentally hemorrhage money.
If we look at the backpacker tier, the daily burn rate is remarkably low. Accommodation is $6 to $12. Food, if you're eating purely local dishes, is $6 to $10 for the entire day. Add $6 for a scooter and maybe a $10 buffer for incidentals. You are surviving, quite comfortably, on $28 to $45 a day.
And if they dive, it's just a flat $32 addition per tank.
The mid-range traveler, assuming two people splitting the cost of a $30 air-conditioned room, spends about $15 to $25 on lodging. They eat slightly nicer seafood dinners, pushing food to $12 to $18. Transport is $6 to $8 for their own scooter and fuel. With a $20 to $40 activity budget, they are living very well for $55 to $75 per person per day.
Even the family of four, booking the larger $60 bungalow in Sumatra, feeding 4 people, and managing multiple scooter rentals or car transfers, caps out at roughly $135 to $210 for the entire family per day.
And we already proved the luxury tier is artificially capped. Even if two people try their absolute hardest to spend money booking the $110 dive resort room, hiring private taxis every day, eating the most expensive fish on the island, they will really struggle to spend more than $150 to $230 a day combined.
But the audit introduces a really fascinating subcategory here, the digital nomad. This is where the macroeconomics get wild. If a remote worker negotiates a monthly rate on a simple room and eats locally, their entire cost of living for a month on Weh Island drops to between $900 and $1,400. That is staggeringly cheap.
It is, but there is a structural barrier that prevents Weh Island from becoming the next Bali or Chiang Mai for digital nomads. The audit refers to it as the connectivity friction.
Right. The Wi-Fi isn't just slow, it drops out entirely. The cellular towers are easily overwhelmed. If your livelihood depends on holding high-bandwidth Zoom calls with clients in New York or London, the infrastructure here will actively destroy your career.
The terrible internet acts as a digital moat. It keeps the heavy remote work crowd out, which in turn prevents the rapid gentrification and price inflation that usually follows them.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are coming for a short trip, how do you accidentally ruin that cheap budget? The audit points out 3 specific value traps where travelers just bleed money.
The first is transport. If you are terrified of riding a scooter and you rely entirely on the private taxi monopoly to get from your guest house to the dive shop or from Iboy to Sabang Town, those $10 rides will stack up instantly. You can easily double your daily budget just on transit.
The second is the food trap. If you stubbornly refuse to eat the local cuisine, if you are craving a chicken parmesan or a Western-style pizza, you are going to pay a massive premium for ingredients that have to be shipped in. And the meal will likely be disappointing anyway. Eat the $2 noodles.
The third trap involves currency exchange, which segues into the absolute most critical section of this entire travel audit. The three great logistics traps that can genuinely ruin your vacation.
This is the practical core of the deep dive. If you ignore everything else, pay attention to this. Trap number 1, the foreign card ATM trap. We touched on Sharia law, but how does it impact banking?
Islamic finance operates under strict principles, the most famous being the prohibition of riba, or interest. Because ACE operates under these strict financial laws, the banking infrastructure is heavily localized and compliant with Islamic principles.
How does that actually affect a tourist from Ohio or London?
The lived reality on the ground is that the ATMs across the province, both in Banda Aceh and on Weh Island, frequently and without any warning, reject foreign-issued Visa and MasterCards. The Western credit networks just clash with the local banking firewalls.
This is a nightmare scenario. I want you to imagine arriving in Sumatra. You land, you walk up to the airport ATM expecting to pull out enough Indonesian rupiah to pay your taxi driver, and the screen just says, transaction declined. You try a different bank's machine at the ferry port, declined.
You get on the boat, you arrive on this remote island, and your piece of plastic is utterly useless. Almost none of the basic bungalows or local warungs have credit card terminals. They operate entirely in cash.
It is literally like time traveling back to the 1990s. You simply cannot rely on a piece of plastic or a digital network to save you. If you show up with no cash, you cannot pay for your room, you cannot buy food, and you cannot even pay a taxi to take you back to the port. You are financially paralyzed.
The audit is uncompromising on the solution. You must bring all the physical cash you will need for your entire trip, either in US dollars to exchange or ideally already converted to Indonesian rupiah, from a major international hub like Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, or Singapore before you ever set foot in the ACE province.
If the idea of carrying a thick envelope of physical cash makes you deeply uncomfortable, this island is not for you. Trap number 2 involves the ferry schedules we discussed earlier, specifically the intersection of flight delays and the Friday prayer shutdown.
The ferry trap catches people who try to optimize their travel day too tightly. If your flight lands at 2 p.m., you might think you have plenty of time to catch a 4 p.m. ferry.
But if there is a thunderstorm over the Malacca Strait and your flight is delayed by an hour, you are going to miss that final boat. You are now bleeding money on an unplanned hotel in Banda Aceh.
And if you happen to book your arrival for a Friday morning, you are walking straight into the societal pause. You will step off the ferry at 10 a.m. and find no taxis, closed shops, and absolutely zero momentum until 2 p.m.
The fix for this is easy. Build buffer days into your itinerary. Fly into Banda Aceh, spend the night, eat some incredible Sumatran food, and take the first morning ferry the next day completely stress-free. Let's move to trap number 3, which is deeply physical. The scooter and terrain trap.
Because there is no public transportation, renting a $6 a day scooter is presented as the default, almost mandatory way to navigate the island.
But we need to talk about the physical geography. This is not a slat, paved grid along a sandy beach. Weh Island is volcanic.
The roads are carved into steep hillsides. They are winding, they feature blind corners, and they are constantly exposed to jungle debris. When it rains, the slick tarmac, combined with the steep gradients, makes riding genuinely dangerous.
If you have never operated a two-stroke scooter, learning on a 30-degree volcanic incline in the rain is a recipe for disaster. The audit points out that a simple mistake here has compounding consequences because of the island's isolation.
Which brings us to the medical reality. The local clinic in Sabang is equipped for basic first aid. They can clean a scrape and stitch a minor cut. But if you wipe out on a scooter and fracture your femur, or if you suffer a severe decompression sickness event while diving, the island cannot handle it.
You require medical evacuation back across the strait to the hospital in Banda Aceh, or even further to a major hub like Singapore or Kuala Lumpur.
This is why the underlying mandate of the audit is that comprehensive travel insurance, specifically policies that explicitly cover scuba diving and emergency medical evacuation, is an absolute non-negotiable requirement.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, these 3 traps, the cash, the ferry, the scooter, they perfectly illustrate the friction we discussed at the start of the deep dive. They are the physical and logistical barriers you must overcome to earn the tranquility of the destination.
And once you overcome them, how safe is the environment itself? If we strip away the environmental hazards of currents and wet roads, what is the human threat level?
The audit paints a picture of extreme security. Violent crime against tourists is virtually non-existent.
The strong social fabric and the strict local laws create an environment where theft and harassment are incredibly rare. This makes it a fascinating destination for solo travelers, particularly solo female travelers.
The consensus is that it is highly secure and very low hassle. The backpacker scene in Iboe is small and tightly knit. You will see the same people at the dive shop in the morning and at the local warung in the evening, making it very easy to integrate socially.
The only friction point for solo female travelers goes right back to the dress code. The safety is absolute, provided the cultural modesty rules are respected when off the beach.
There is a really funny contradiction in the source regarding the solo travel experience here. It contrasts the total lack of nightlife with the purpose of the trip.
Yeah, if you are 21 years old and hunting for a full moon party, the fact that the island goes completely dark and silent at 8:30 p.m. is seen as a major flaw. It will feel suffocatingly boring.
But if you are a solo traveler who just completed 3 intense drift dives along a deep wall, your body is flooded with nitrogen and exhaustion. For that person, the silence is actually the ultimate comfort feature. You are not lying awake in your $10 bungalow while a beach club next door blasts bass music until 4 a.m. The lack of nightlife guarantees physical recovery.
It is the comfort of silence.
Let's pull back and look at the actual highlights. You endure the friction, you bring the physical cash, you survive the scooter ride. What is the reward? Let's talk about the best of the best.
Underwater, the reward is simply world-class. The snorkeling channel around Rubia Island is accessible right off the beach. It's teeming with life, and it costs nothing to explore.
For the divers, the topography is stunning. You have sites like Betito Kong and the Canyon, which are famous for massive schools of pelagic fish and moray eels.
And for wreck enthusiasts, you have the Sophie Rickmers. This is a massive 134-meter-long German cargo ship that was scuttled during World War II to avoid capture. It sits deep. The deck is at roughly 37 meters, plunging down to 55 meters, making it an incredible, challenging dive for advanced technical divers.
On top of that, getting certified is remarkably cheap. A full PADI open water certification runs around $390. Topside, you have the Kilometer Knoll Monument.
Kilometer Zero. It marks the absolute westernmost, northernmost geographical tip of the Indonesian archipelago. It is a striking visual location, completely free to visit, and serves as the ultimate destination for a late afternoon scooter ride.
You combine that with waking up to the sunrise over the calm waters of Sumatra and eating a $4 to $7 plate of fresh grilled snapper, and the value proposition is just undeniable.
But the audit insists on a reality check, the Instagram versus reality battle.
Right. The aesthetic of a tropical island on social media is heavily curated. The photos of the clear water over Rubia Island hide the grueling, sweaty reality of the ferry ride.
They hide the fact that Iboe is not a manicured, raked, white sand resort beach. It is a functional, rustic, working coastline.
The photos don't show you the gecko in your rafters or the frustration of trying to load an email while the wifey drops out for the 6th time in an hour.
The core advice here is to manage your expectations regarding luxury. Do not overpay for a supposedly premium room, because fundamentally you are still renting a wooden structure with basic plumbing and an AC unit. Embrace the rustic nature of the island rather than trying to buy your way out of it.
If all of this sounds like too much work, what are the alternatives? If someone is listening and thinking, I want cheap diving, but I cannot deal with the cash traps and the lack of a cold beer, where else does the audit suggest they look in 2026?
It draws two major comparisons. The first is the Perhentian Islands off the east coast of Malaysia.
How does that compare?
The fundamentals are similar. It is a Muslim-majority region, and the diving is incredibly cheap, also sitting around $30 to $40 a tank. However, the Perhentians have vastly superior infrastructure and much easier access from a major hub like Kuala Lumpur.
It's livelier. The rules regarding alcohol and dress are significantly more relaxed for tourists, and the logistics are smoother.
The trade-off is crowd density. The Perhentians are far busier. Weh Island wins outright if your priority is absolute solitude, rock-bottom room rates, and that genuine, off-the-map frontier feeling.
The second comparison is the absolute titan of the budget dive world. The Gili Islands, specifically Gili Trawangan, just off the coast of Lombok and Bali. For 20 years, this was the default answer for cheap Southeast Asian diving.
But the global travel patterns have fundamentally altered the Gilis. The massive surge in post-pandemic travel and the displacement of tourists from Bali has subjected the Gilis to severe over-tourism.
The infrastructure is groaning. The reefs are under immense ecological pressure from the sheer volume of fins in the water. And consequently, the prices for rooms, food, and dieting have all surged to capture the demand.
The Gillies offer massive built-up infrastructure. You have sprawling beach bars, infinite dining options, alcohol, and a constant thumping social scene.
It is the exact opposite of Weh. So if I asked you right now, if you were forced to choose today, where are you sending a 25-year-old backpacker versus a 40-year-old dive enthusiast?
The synthesis is simple. The backpacker wanting a party goes to the Gillies. The pure dive enthusiast hunting for pristine, quiet reefs goes to Weh.
Which brings us to the final matrix. Is it actually worth it? The audit grades the island across our different traveler demographics, scoring it out of 10 based on value and experience. Let's run through them.
For the backpacker, Weh Island scores a 9 out of 10. Assuming you do not require a party scene, it is arguably the best budget value remaining in the entire region. The cost-to-quality ratio of the diving is simply unbeatable.
For the mid-range traveler, it scores an 8 out of 10. It is a highly rewarding, low-stress environment, provided you mitigate the logistics traps. Bring your cash, except that mid-range means a reliable AC unit and not high-end luxury, and you will have an incredible trip.
The score drops significantly for the family demographic, coming in at a 6 out of 10.
The east side at Sumatra is undeniably lovely, but the sheer travel effort required to transport children through the flight, the port, the ferry, and the island taxis is incredibly tough. Combine that with the distance from advanced medical care, and it becomes a moderate to high-effort choice for parents.
The digital nomad also receives a 6 out of 10. The extreme affordability is highly attractive, but the terrible connectivity is a deal breaker for heavy work.
And finally, the luxury traveler scores a 3 out of 10. The advice is absolute: skip it. The infrastructure to support a 5-star expectation simply isn't there.
To summarize the entire audit, the decision to visit Weh Island boils down to 3 mandatory criteria. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Do you dive or snorkel?
2, did you bring physical cash?
And 3, are you traveling between February to April or September to early November? If you get those 3 right, it is the best value in Southeast Asia.
That is the mechanical reality of Weh Island. We have mapped the costs, the cultural guardrails, the logistical traps, and the massive environmental payoffs. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
But before we sign off, there is a final lingering thought that emerges from this data, an inevitable shift that wasn't explicitly covered in the source audit, but one that will dictate the future of the island.
Wait, what is the blind spot?
We spent a lot of time discussing the digital moat, how the terrible cellular and Wi-Fi infrastructure actively repels the massive gentrifying wave of digital nomads and remote workers. It protects the local housing market and keeps the bungalows at $10.
Right. It forces you to disconnect.
But as remote work technology like Starlink inevitably reaches these corners of the globe, the connectivity friction will vanish. It is only a matter of time before a guest house owner in Aboyas mounts a satellite dish on their tin roof. And when that happens, will the digital nomads flood in and destroy the very quiet and affordability that makes Weh Island so special right now?
That is a brilliant and slightly terrifying thought.
Is this specific moment right now in 2026 and 2027 the absolute last window to see Weh as a pure, disconnected frontier?
We will leave you to ponder that question as you plan your next trip. If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.